Curse of the White Corsair, Book 2, A Cornish Concubine, Part 2. Out of the fire into the pan, on to Constantinople, arrived the wretched caravan of dozens of the doleful. Cornwall's three most woeful, yet worse it would unfurl. Wet-eyed Constantinople foreclosed the outside world, full of the direst dismay, as they were dragged inside of the vast Topkapi Syrai, where they would all reside. They'd never see outside again. Their cosmos was this city, their universe once they traversed the fence of felicity, that fourth gate of felicity where women wandered bare to sate sultan toxicity, were hundreds naked there of multiple ethnicities. Black eunuchs edged the square like charcoal sculptures stood on guard. Sweet Yasmin spiced the boulevard, another scents of peach and plum, yet three they craved a Cornish slum. Fountains sparkled in the sun, and centrepiece a river run, splashing the exquisite tiles, and smiling smiles of crocodiles sat the Sultan valleyed. She glided up to greet the guests and ordered they expose their breasts. As for suppleness got checked, Jane Terror clung on Sarah's neck. Corsair Sultan: how very quaint, a string of pearls hung about this other girl, a necklace strung with flaxen curls, I'll call it Insake Coley. Sarah Drake: her name is Jane, whom bout me clung. You Corsairs took away her tongue, and though the songbirds lost its song, it's Jane Joseph of Van Gogh. Sarah Drake now more did speak, her end a screaming whine. Two eunuchs came, impaled a stake, which filled her mouth with pine. Corsair Sultan: be speaking Turk by 1 year's end. 1 year, young Insake Coley. You'll speak else reaching the year's end, I'll skewer her, your other friend, you and that friend if you offend and diss the Sultan's service. And so she studied in despair, and not for hers but the will fair. Her last connect to St. Cavern was Sarah's sister Frances. And dance she did when ordered to, and taught concoct a coffee brew, sherbet making, how to sew, but main tuition to bestow stories told in Turkish. Scrutinising so hard, converse in Turkish with her guard, and though her vital force was scarred, sought to be the Sultan's bard, save Sarah's sister Frances. Be prepared, warned odalisks, at war right now with Safayids. Was Murad for, but more than him, she fearful of mad Ibrahim. Sir Khalim Memela: the Sultan such a sadist! Aghast at his return, but his brother's loco ravings to Collier more concern. Crazed wailing from a hidden face emanated from the cafes, piercing echoed round the place, out a tiny ornate cage in the inner sanctum. And every time a girl went by, horrific howling amplified, saw passing shadows skim the slate as sent assassins laid in wait. Saw in the shadows of handmaids a strangler sent with golden braids by a brother who'd betrayed mummy's promises. Some said he had a feeble mind, alike his mental uncle. Some said it years of kept confined that caused the kid to crumble. 50 odd protracted weeks her blood by screaming curdled. Learned she and learned to speak Turk, and the tongue was hurdled. For 50 weeks those chilling shrieks endured till time was summoned. Bone-chilling shrieks for 50 weeks till summoned by the Sultan. A hero's blood ran in her veins, which gave her some support to pass the polls in 50 brains that paved the way to court. Decapitated janissaries lined the avenue, whose faces etched the tragedies of their failed coup. 100 woeful inert eyes unwatched her rap the door, and as a goat in gal disguise unsaw her crab the floor. Behind her 50 craniums, like florets on stiff stalks, like 50 grim geraniums, urged her start to talk. And every severed soldier's head, though speechless with their stare, whispered, and that look it said, say strong, but be aware. Beware his virtuous veneer, corruption lurks abaft. She heard as prone in front his throne, he poked her with his shaft. She glanced into his sweet facade and quivered neath her veil. He poked again his golden rod to instigate her tale. From fear her feet unstable, as commanded stand then seat, and so began her fable on the battle of Blackheath. Of Cornwall and rebellion, of a smith who'd faced a king, who'd rallied Cornish countrymen, and then the reckoning. While glassy eyes unfocused from the booze that he'd absorbed, still glistened with the legend and with how the myth performed. And when her story ended, the blacksmith he became, and she became King Henry, and though it just a game, he battered her unconscious, then dumped her in the drain. She could not walk a fortnight, for he'd raped her in the rear, and even gifted foresight could still not see it clear, how to save that sweet soul Frances, who passed away from fear. Her internal injuries amplified her grief, to merge malignant miseries of pain and disbelief, immersed a trine of miseries, pain, death and disbelief, for gone was her friend Frances, whose tortured years too brief. Qasim Sultan. Yet you ascend, promotion won, you've made an ace impression. Prepare again, as all too soon, the Sultan's second session. Get ready for my savage son, his rampant raw aggression. Repair and rest to stay alive, the hatred you'll conceal. Must hide your hate on to survive, a month you'll have to heal. Mask it well, that sour distaste, to tell your family fiction, to next appear all charm and chase, or face a crucifixion. Languished, bedridden, mended, behind a silken screen, weeping, else pretending that she were Kurno's queen, pretending as escaping in dreams was to forget about the vicious raping she'd get the next duet. Still had inside the blacksmith's steel, yet full of trepidation, for the subsequent ordeal whence finished her narration. Another arduous ordeal owed to intoxication, shellacking was with far less zeal, nor anal copulation. Despite both eyes closing blue and jugs of blood he'd spilled, she knew third time what best to do was keep his flagon filled. So she her story lengthened, which paused to get him pissed, as with him wasted strengthened prospects to go on exist. Kept malvatatio vino flowing, as so slowly span her yarn, hoping that the doping by the drink will dull the harm. And so on and in and on it went, a dozen times to date, the story told, and then he'd vet, blind drunk rate more sedate. For drink could quench a fiery mood that killed a cook when sick his food, a courtier for being rude, four siblings of his father's brood, a slave who dare unasked translate, a merchantman assumed a mate, the grand vizier once got irate, any whom to bloodlust sate. Lovers on the Bosporus, patrons in and in, for though he'd love to quaff the stuff, for others drink a sin. Ditto any smoker with tobacco in their tin. Citizens caught with coffee, akin Selim the Grim, the girls who made the toffee, accused of poisoning. Oft times would work, sometimes was worse, when wine would fuel his brain. Twice as cruel, thrice as perverse, returning from campaign. Always much more vicious, on homecoming from jihad, more merciless, malicious from the battles that he'd had, which multiplied immensely with the capture of Baghdad.